We're going to need our Bibles. So thanks for having me again, guys. I feel really honored to be back. Sorry to make you suffer again. So this theme is a wonderful theme. When Mariam sent me the list of every week, I thought, wow, it's beautiful. I want to attend it, and I want to learn personally. And I was telling Mariam, preparing today's topic about the secret of joy was actually really difficult for me. I found it very tough because I don't feel like it's something that I've achieved perfectly at all. It's something I'm still very much a work in progress in this area, and I'll have good days and bad days, and I'm still trying to unlock the secret. But I'm going to share with you what I've learned and what I'm working on personally, and what I think probably many of us are also working on. I need to play a little audio clip, but I don't have internet. I'm not roaming today. Does somebody have a phone? Sorry, it's like 1 minute on YouTube or Safari or whatever. But first thing, before I play it, what does joy mean? What does the word joy mean? Especially in the Christian context, when someone says joy. Thank you. Yes. Unconditional happiness. Very good. So maybe you've heard the definition. Somebody will say happiness is dependent on happenings. It's dependent on what's going on, your circumstance. Oh, thank you. That's a very cool, whatever you call it, pulpit, tripod, whatever. Thank you. Perfect. Podium, that's the word. So happiness is dependent on happenings. Joy, whatever you go through, ups and downs, difficulties, it's consistent. Nothing can rock it. And that's why it's really difficult, actually, for me. Oh, sorry, because I talk too much, it locked. It can be very difficult to be in a constant state of joy regardless of what's going on around you. So this, God gave me a little helping hand when I was preparing. Okay, listen, hopefully the microphone will pick it up. So I want you to listen to this and don't resist the temptation to leave the room after when you're listening to this. Sorry. Is it playing? So what is that the sound of? Not pardon? A bee or a fly? A fly. My sister, we were all sleeping at my parents' house, my sister and her kids, my kids, we were all doing a sleepover at my parents' house. And one night, it was like 1 a.m., and she came running out of her room. She's like, Mary, she woke me up. Mary, can you come? There are 2 flies in my room, and I cannot kill them. I can't sleep. They're just driving me crazy. Apparently, she thought I'd be better at killing flies than she was, and I was, actually. I got both of them. But flies are joy killers. They're tiny, but they can be really, really annoying. If there's one in the room with you and it's quiet and you can hear it, I don't know about you, but for me, I find it very irritating. Like, I just want that fly to get out of the room. And sometimes that's something very silly and, not ominous in any way, but sometimes there are circumstances in life that can make it very difficult to be cheerful and joyful and happy. Sickness is a real thing. Sometimes when you're young, you feel invincible, but I think probably every one of us is going to be affected by sickness, unfortunately, at one point in our lives. Money problems, school worries, exam worries, sins that you keep falling into and you really hate doing, but you keep doing it over and over again, family troubles at home. There is a very long list of difficulties that all of us go through. And I've learned as a Tasoni, as a priest's wife, not to be fooled by appearances. Like, the outside can look like everything is rosy, but I would say 99.9% at any point of time, everybody has something that is troubling them. So difficulty is normal, and it's a part of life, unfortunately. And if we wait for those flies to go away, we will never be happy. So this series is about learning how to be joyful, not happy, but how to be joyful all the time. And that's a spiritual thing. And we're going to talk also about how to... actually, I want to talk to you about something else as well. As Christians, we can sometimes be guilty of thinking that... and this can be a big stumbling block in our spiritual lives. So some of you might know this story. This is a true story, something that happened to me. So who was here on my wedding day? Maybe some of you, yeah. So, so my wedding day, I was very foolish. It was a day in May, and I had two wedding receptions planned. One really big one at the St. George Cathedral in Stevenage, and a very much smaller one later. For the big one, we had a reception outside after the wedding. I don't know, most of you, maybe or some of you have seen the grounds. So the grounds are beautiful, big fields and whatever. So the caterer told me, it's England, you really should get a tent or a marquee because it's likely to rain. I was like, no, God's going to make it not rain. I was trying to keep the cost low, foolish. I was like, it's going to be an extra £1,000 pounds. So he kept telling me, no, you really need to get a marquee. I was like, no, I'm going to pray. And I thought I was preaching, I believe in God. God's going to make it not rain and it's going to be fine. I'm not worried at all. And I really wasn't worried until the wedding day. And I remember standing at the altar with my husband, looking out the big windows and seeing it rain. And I was so upset. I was so disappointed. I was like, how could God do this to me, let it rain? And I met Abuna Antonio, he was helping to coordinate everything, came and whispered, he's like, Mary, I'm so sorry. We have to move the catering indoors. I was so upset with God, actually. Like, how could he let that happen to me? I gave my life to him. I depended on him for so much, and I do so much for him all the time. How could he let me down? And honestly, I have to tell you the truth. Up till then, I had felt him answer all of my prayers every single time. That was the first time that I felt he really didn't come through for me. I know it's something ridiculous. It's not life, shattering event. It rained on your wedding, so what, whatever. But for me, it was a big deal. But there's this dangerous, I'm sure you guys have heard of the prosperity gospel, where, this idea that if you love God and follow God, everything is going to be perfect in your life. All your prayers will be answered exactly the way that you want. And if they're not, it's because you don't have enough faith. God will do everything perfectly. Nothing bad will happen to you. You'll be rich. You'll be successful. You'll have money. You won't be sick. And that has done a great disservice to Christians because, as you know, that isn't real life. Real life, there is pain and suffering, and he promised that there would be tribulations. Like, just logically, as a Coptic Orthodox church, we have martyrs. That means they got killed, they got murdered. It means that God didn't rescue them at the very last second, with his angels and whatever. A lot of the time he healed them, but eventually most of them were martyred. So tribulation is a real part of real life. And being a Christian, even the most faithful Christian, does not mean you will not have problems. So first of all, we've got to get that idea in our heads, that this idea that everything's going to be perfect, like the outside of everything, like finances, all these things that you might be worried, that's not how God works. He works on a completely different level. He still offers us joy. There's actually a very good sermon series by Father Antoine Messe, I don't know what it's called, but he talks about this. And he says actually a lot of people have fallen away from the faith because somebody told them, if you just had more faith, then everything would be fine in your life. Or you didn't believe enough, and that's why things didn't work out perfectly. You didn't pray enough, and that's why things didn't work out. That's not true. But like we know, like St. Paul, who was a great missionary, even he prayed for healing. He says in the New Testament, it says that he asked 3 times with pleading God, saying, please remove this thorn away from me. We don't know what the thorn was. Pleaded 3 times, begged God, and he's much better than me, much better than most of us. Great saint who dedicated himself to God faithfully, was holy, ticked all the boxes. And he pleaded with God 3 times to remove the thorn, and God told him, no, this is good for you. So just to keep that in our heads, but it also balancing it with, because sometimes we just throw everything away and we're like, okay, well, if he's not going to answer me, then there's no point in praying. No, he still wants us to pray and ask him. He says so many times to ask. So never give up hope and keep asking for your requests, asking for him to solve those problems. But then the ultimate thing is to somehow have peace and trust with whatever the outcome may be, which can be very difficult. Something that's also made it very hard to find joy in life is this culture that we live in, and I see it in my children as well, especially, and myself now, of instant gratification. You want something, Amazon can deliver it within, I don't know, how quickly can Amazon deliver here in England? Next day, same day. There was a time when they could deliver within 3 hours or 4 hours. I don't know if that still exists. But, or Netflix and all these shows, like, you can watch the series back to back. I grew up in an era, I don't know who grew up in this era, Abuna, probably like me, where you had to wait till next week to watch the next episode. And if you missed the first 10 minutes, you missed the first 10 minutes. That was the era that we grew up in. The shops closed at 5, and that was it. You're out of luck. You had to be organized. You had to wait to get things. There was no such thing as delivery at all. At all. Nothing was instant. You didn't just get what you wanted when you wanted it. Like, you had to be patient and had to wait, and often had to not even get that thing. Like, it's a very different, and that feeds into this lack of joy, because we're used to getting what we want when we want it. Like, just with my kids, for example, when my kids get used to, for example, on holidays, every time we go to the museum or a park, theme park, whatever, they go to the gift shop every single time. After a while, it just becomes expected. And actually, the joy of getting it is completely lost on them. But if it's something that becomes unusual and they have to wait and they have to be disciplined somewhat, there's a lot more happiness or joy that comes from getting it. So I think this culture of instant gratification has made us, has made it harder for us to get in a place where we can be joyful, because we're so used to just having it our way all the time, even in health. Like, I don't know who's ever been sick here, but when you're sick, you expect you get to see the doctor straight away. And why didn't I get to see the doctor straight away? And why didn't they do this for me? And why didn't they do that for me? And they should do this, especially maybe in North America even more than here, because it's in the States it's like private, so you get what you want when you want. When you live in poorer countries like Egypt, it's that expectation is not there. Who's ever gone on a mission trip to Africa or somewhere poorer? What's one big comment that everybody says about the people there when they come back? They're so happy. They're so happy. That's related to all of this. Jesus, when he was preaching and talking and doing miracles, he was talking to people who weren't used to getting what they wanted when they wanted, who were used to death being a common part of life, sickness being common, being poor, going with 1 meal a day or less was normal. That was the culture he grew up in. And when you go to do mission, that's also the culture that those people are used to. And somehow, they're more joyful than we are, somehow. They have a lot less. I know it's like a stereotype, but actually there's a lot of truth to it, and there's a reason why. I was asking my mom for tips on the talk this morning. I was like, Mommy, what do you think are any good things to mention? So she told me a story about Abuna Justus. And he was he was known for dressing very ragged, very poor, like having one, black tunic, the black galabeya, and not having shoes, and just living a very, very poor, simple life. And this rich man went to go see him. The rich man had this is a true story, rich man had so many problems and worries, and he was a rich, wealthy man who had everything you could imagine, but he was so burdened and miserable and worried about this and that and that. And he went to go see him, and he saw Abuna Justus was like cheerful and happy and smiling, even though he looked, destitute, but his face was shining. And he couldn't understand, like, why are you so happy? There's a secret in that. And we say this secret every time we do liturgy or the liturgy of the word. And this is the secret. What do we say at the beginning of especially maybe the deacons and the girls will know, the end of the Catholic epistle? Yes, let's open it in 1 John chapter 2, 15 to 17, or if you know it, you can say it for us out loud on the microphone.
Do not love the world or the things in the world, for the world and all of its lusts will pass away, but the truth and glory of God endures forever. Amen.
So this is part of the secret of joy, is not wanting anything from this world at all. And realizing that the lust of the world, I want this, I want that, which you see in children a lot. I want this. If only I got this will make. How many Christmas presents have I bought my children, and it was played with for a week? Or have your parents bought you? You play with it for a week, and then it's forgotten. Or we have pets at home, and I'm the only one who takes care of the pets that we have at home. My kids, they are dying. They cannot survive unless they get those pets. And then we get it, and it's me feeding them, cleaning the cage. And joy doesn't come from having. Actually, having is a joy killer. Having too much is a joy killer. I don't know if anybody's watched Marie Kondo. Is that how you say her name? Is that more my age range? She's like the decluttering queen. So she had this show on Netflix about decluttering your house. How if you've got so much clutter in your home, it steals your joy a little bit. So it's good to kind of get rid of owning too much. And I see so much truth in it. Or like, for example, I've left my stroller upstairs and I'm not worried about it because I don't have anything I care about. Or when I leave home for, an extended period, 2 weeks, Abuna and I will joke, we'll say, we're not worried about somebody robbing us. There's nothing that important in our house. We have like a Mac that's like 20 years old. There's nothing. I don't care. I mean, I do care a little bit, but but it's a nice feeling, actually. The less ties we have to this world, and the next level up is to not even have ties to your health, not even have ties to the things that seem good, like family, and like to care about those things, but not to be your happiness is dependent upon them. And when you go to poor countries, a lot of the time, that's how they live. Not by choice. They don't have a choice. And that's just the way of living in these poorer countries, is to totally depend on God, and to know what I have can be with me one day and can be lost the next day. Just like easy like that. That's life. Not in a miserable way, but it's not a secret. This is like a fact. Let's open Job. I was discussing this with one of my children, and she was telling me, Mommy, I don't understand Job, like how he went through what he went through, and he continued to love God very much. Let's open Job 1, verse 21. So Job, the story of Job is a man who had everything you could want. He was successful, he had money, he had animals in those days, that meant you were rich. He had lots of kids, and his kids used to gather every week and have lovely family gathering and hang out together. It actually says that in the Bible. He was so prosperous. And the devil came and said to God, he only loves you because he's prosperous. Let me take away some of his blessings and see what happens to him. So God said, no, he loves me so much. Nothing. He's not gonna suddenly start to curse my name. The devil's like, oh yeah, no. Let me take away everything that he has. And bit by bit he did. He killed his kids, and all of his money and his wealth disappeared overnight. And then he started to attack his health next and cover him with boils so he couldn't even eat and drink. He really suffered a lot. But listen to what Job says when he's in the middle of these difficulties. Could someone read for us? Chapter 1, verse 21, please. Who would like to read for us?
And he said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
So is this true of everybody? Who was born wearing clothes here? Anybody? Born wearing designer gear? Anybody born with an iPad? Anybody born able to take care of themselves? Like able to feed themselves? So Job, it's very true. It's very simple. Naked I was born, naked I will return. And it's so true. I'm sure you've seen those pictures of, the rich guy holding the bags of money, trying to go into heaven with his bags. And he gets told at the gate, no, you have to leave all that behind. That's all left behind. That's a reality for all of us. And the sooner we realize it, the more joyful we'll be, the more happy, because our joy will not be dependent on something that can be taken away from us. Our joy will be dependent on something else. I read something that actually challenged me so much. The first time I read it, I ignored it, because I was like, they must have miswritten it. And I read it somewhere else. So the first time I read it was in a book by Father Matta Meschini. He's a great monk priest who died, 10 years ago perhaps. He was very close to God, and he's very famous for a lot of his writings. And the second time I read it, the first time I read it, I just ignored it. I thought it must be mistranslated, because that doesn't make sense. The second time I read it was writings about Elder, I think his name's Porphyrius. Wait, I always get his name muddled. Yeah, Porphyrius. I think he's Greek Orthodox. Also from the same recent, not from a long time ago. So they both have beautiful writings. I encourage you to read any of their writings if you can. Elder Porphyrius. Very holy, holy people. So they both said something that challenged me very, very much. So I was on holiday recently, and I really like going on holiday because it's more relaxed. You've got the beach, you've got nature, you've got things to inspire you. And I find it a time for me to reconnect with God, because you can look at the trees, the beach, whatever. Who here finds all of that inspiring for their spiritual life? I wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning easily, because I'm on holiday. So, you have a nice breakfast, whatever. And I'll sit and read the Bible. And I'll look at the nature, listen to the birds. And it would lift my soul to heaven, make me so happy. And I read this in one of the books one of those days when I was, admiring the beach and felt really close to God. And he said, the true spirituality doesn't even need nature and doesn't even admire nature even to be close to God. I was like, what? That's ridiculous. I've always thought nature is good to be close to God. And I read this in 2 different places, and he was saying nature even holds no meaning anymore. The beauty of the trees, the beauty of the sea holds nothing anymore. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. So I was asking somebody about this, and they were telling me, you know why? Because these people have reached such a high spiritual level, which is open for all of us. I'm not saying this is their life and our, but this is, if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to get there. They reach such a high spiritual level that for them, they don't even need to look at these things to bring them close. You could put them anywhere, and they will find God. Can you imagine that? Like being anywhere, anytime, in any problems, and finding God and hearing him very clearly. For me, I need to have all the right things, my cup of coffee, my kids asleep, a beautiful scenery and no worries to be able to hear God. But these guys are saying, no, when you become very close to him, you don't even need that anymore. That's not to say that those things are bad. They're tools to help us. I will still, if you give me the choice, I will still go and find nature to inspire me, because that's where I am spiritually right now. There's nothing wrong with it. God made nature. But can you imagine, who can you think of in the Bible who was not in a pretty scenery, not on the beach in Sicily, and was praising God? And was St. Paul and Silas were in chains, not with a cup of coffee and in their pajamas, relaxing with their feet up. No, they were in chains in a prison, the 2 of them. And doesn't say they weren't praying, they were praising God, which is so different. You can't praise if you're miserable. Praise means I'm sure you guys, I haven't been to Tisbeha here, but I think in a long time, but it's where you're jumping off your feet because you're so excited, so happy. And actually all the Tisbeha songs, I'm not an expert in this at all, but the praises that they pray up, the midnight praises and all that, it's all telling stories of God's miracles and God's victory and all these difficulties. And that's what St. Paul and St. Silas were living. They were looking at, I don't know what the walls are, stone wall. Nothing. And that tells me that nobody can do anything to them. Nobody can steal anything from them or inflict anything on them that will steal their joy from God. They're in such, and that's open to all of us. That is not just for the saints. But we can do things to help ourselves to get to that place where our joy is complete all the time. And if you don't know that that's where you're heading, you're never going to go in that way. So this is God is reminding us. And the book of Philippians is called the book of joy, which is St. Paul wrote this while he was in prison. And it's famous because in this book, he uses the word joy or rejoice so many times when he's in the least joyful situation. So I'm sure many people sitting here are going through difficulties or experiencing things that are making them driving them crazy, like that fly, worries that are just going around, buzzing around in your head. You're worried about this thing or that thing. And it's just, you try to figure out, solve these problems, solve this, fix that, or you don't find a solution for all these problems that you're finding. You have no hope. You have no way out. You feel like this is it. This is my dealing, and God has dealt me some bad cards. My kids and I would play a lot of card games together. And a lot of the time we'll blame it on the cards. We'll say, I just got bad cards. And there's nothing you can do about it. And you're like, I'm destined to lose. There's no way. We play 5 Alive and Monopoly Deal. And, if you get a really bad hand, it's hard to get out of that and win. You're really a pro if you can win. So we'll say it's just a bad hand. Sometimes we'll feel like that. We'll feel like I've just got a bad, and that's a horrible feeling, to feel like there is no hope. To feel like my dreams that I have, there is no way that they're going to happen. That's a joy stealer. And that's a horrible place to be in. And many of us have been in that situation. But God's promises are much greater than that. Who's here heard of Corrie ten Boom? Ah, okay. Wow. Okay, so Corrie ten Boom, she died in the 90s, when she was 90, I think the 90s, or 83. So she was a Dutch woman who in the World War, her family used to hide Jews in her house. Maybe some of you, The Hiding Place. That's her famous book, or there's a movie also. She was such a sweetie. Her and her sister and her dad and her whole family, they had built, they're Christians, but they had built a wall, a secret wall in their house that could fit 6 people, to hide 6 Jewish people. And it's said that they hid about 800 people during the World War. They would hide Jews, and it started just by somebody heard that they helped somebody, so she came knocking at their door and said, "Can you help me? I can't find any food to eat." And they would collect ration cards, because in those days you could only eat if you had a ration card, and they didn't give ration cards to Jews. It was in Holland. So they had like 100 ration cards, and they would give them out to the Jewish people, give them out to the resistance, and they would hide them in their wall. Anyway, so they did this for a long time, and somebody betrayed them. A Dutch person told the police and said, "These guys are doing something sneaky." So the police came and raided their house and took the whole family, 30 people. It was extended family living in the house, and put Corrie and her sister Betsy and their dad in concentration camps. I'm not sure how long they stayed in the concentration camps, but Corrie and her sister Betsy used to do Bible studies in this camp, and they were made somehow. I mean, can you imagine what a concentration camp is like? I know we're hearing about Palestine and all the terrible things that are happening there, and there's a lot of suffering everywhere in the world, and there historically has always been, unfortunately. And they lived this. They were like St. Paul in this horrible situation with no hope. No one's going to rescue them. Her and her sister, and their dad died within 10 days of this, because they were treated horrifically. And she stayed joyful and committed to their mission to share the gospel. And many people converted in the concentration camps because of their love and their kindness and their hope. And I think a week before Corrie got set free, which was also by a miracle, her sister died in the camp. Betsy died in the camp. But just before she died, Betsy told Corrie, she said, "You know, one day, if we ever get out of this, let's build another house to save more people, a house that we can rescue the people who have suffered as a result of all of this going on, including people who are Nazis who've changed their mind and have been left with nothing." And can you imagine, you're in the middle of this situation, and your dream is to continue doing more mission work when you still have hope somehow in that horrible situation. And your dream is to continue to serve other people. And that's actually what she did. When she got out, she again established a house to rescue people who were destitute because of what had happened to them, or what they also inflicted on others, but they'd been left with nothing. So her Corrie ten Boom, her book that she wrote is called The Hiding Place. And she talks about having joy in a horrible situation. And this is a person just like you and I. But the difference between her and me, or her and us, is that she, and St. Paul as well, in the book of Philippians, her whole focus was on serving God. Her whole purpose, which nobody can steal from you. Imagine you go to work, and the purpose, the reason you're going to work, is to honor God and to do his will in your work. And then you get fired the next day. Will you be miserable, or you'll be okay? You'll be okay, because you know that the reason I'm doing this is for his glory. And that's why St. Paul, when he's in prison, he's able to continue being joyful, because he knows everything he's doing it for God, not for me. I'm not doing anything for the lust of the world, the lust of the flesh. I'm doing it all for the glory of God. God takes us step by step. He's not going to expect that overnight you become, or I become, that, focused on him. But imagine if we really, like it says in the Bible, everything we do in word and deed, we do it for the Lord. We do it as the Lord. He even says to the slaves, he's saying, because they were saying, "Oh, should the slaves be set free?" Like in the New Testament, the people are asking, I can't remember who they're asking, St. Paul or who, but in one of his letters he says, even to the slaves, just do everything you do it, everything you do in word and deed, do it to the Lord. Do everything faithfully to God. That changes that changes your perspective on everything. And that's how Corrie ten Boom was, and how St. Paul as well, able to rejoice in prison, because everything he does is for God's glory. And that can't be stolen from you. There's another beautiful story in Daniel chapter 3. We have in Toronto, Canada's not a very Christian country. Maybe historically it was, but now it's not so much. But there's a really cool restaurant downtown called The Fourth Guy. And this is from the book of Daniel. Sorry, I can never find it here. Who can read for us Daniel 3:17 to 18? So this, before we read the verse, this story is about the three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these three Jewish men loved God very much. And Nebuchadnezzar the king was just, he wasn't a believer in God, and he wanted everybody to worship the idols and to burn incense to them. So people who were jealous of them came and told the king, oh, King Nebuchadnezzar, these three guys who you really like, they don't worship gods the way that we do. They don't worship our idols. You should go and punish them. You should go and throw them in a fire because they're so arrogant and they're doing their own thing. So the king went to them and said, guys, will you come and worship our idols and our gods? And they said, never, no way. We will never do that. We will only worship God. He said, well, I'm going to throw you in the fire and you will die. And listen to their answer. I love it. I love that. They're totally focused on God, doing their job faithfully, but completely focused on God and unwilling to waver from him. Listen to their answer. Who would like to read it for us? Daniel 3:17 to 18. Anybody? No?
Anybody has a Bible?
Oh, yeah. One at the back.
Daniel 3:13 to 18?
17 to 18, I believe. Yes. So this is them answering the king when the king's like, I'm going to throw you in fire if you don't worship these idols. What do they say to him?
If that is the case, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up.
Thank you. So this is not the prosperity gospel. This is not, well, my God's going to save me regardless, and I'm good, and I'm not scared, and he's going to save me. No, this is the real gospel. This is, well, we refuse to worship anything other than the real God, and we know he can save us, because we do. We do know that God can solve all of our problems. That's the truth, and he does. He does miracles all the time, which is where we get our hope from. He does do miracles so many times. So never give up hope. But they say, but regardless, even if he, I love this line, even if he doesn't, we don't care. Gosh, like what unwavering faith, what like strength of love for God. And you know where all of this comes from? I was actually thinking about this even more. I was thinking, well, how do we get such strength of love towards God? It's from his love towards us. You know the song that Rhonda was leading us in? I encourage you to listen to it again. He is jealous for me. That song that we sang, I can't remember all the words, but it is so beautiful. It talks about the depth of his love for us. And that is the secret of joy, to bask in his love, to enjoy his love. To try and have faith without enjoying God's love is impossible. That's just being legalistic. The only way to have joy all the time, the only way to have a faith that is as strong as these people, St. Paul, Daniel, Corey ten Boom, is to allow yourself the space and the time to bask in his love. And how does that happen? Psalm 16 verse 11, it says, in your presence is fullness of joy. That is the secret. In your presence is fullness of joy. The Psalms are full of this. David will go with all of his worries. He's being chased by Saul. Somebody wants to kill him. He's terrified for his life. He's lost everything. And he'll be pouring all of these troubles and woes out to God. And it will end the psalm with words of victory and joy and words of saying, God, I know you will take care of me. You will rescue me. You are the greatest lover, Lord. You are God. You are the creator. You are all powerful. You are like the most magnificent and the most loving, like it said in that song. So to try and have joy or faith without tasting his love is impossible. So I encourage all of us, including myself, spend more time with him. If what you want to have is joy, if what you want to have is a bigger faith to be like these people, and I promise you, these people that I'm sharing their stories, this is for you and I. This is not for external people. This is, and actually, if you've ever met a saint, they're really simple. They're not, a lot of them are not highly educated. A lot of them can't read. A lot of them don't have the resources that you and I have. A lot of them have nothing except for eyes focused on him and a faith that says, I want to spend time with God, that makes space for God. So the secret of joy is to sit in his presence, to hear his voice, to allow him to sing songs to you, to allow him to pour his word into your heart, to allow, Corrie ten Boom says about her time when she was in concentration camp, she said, I went to the depths of the low, and I found God there even. And I tested all of his promises, and I found them to be true. That's another thing I want to tell you. Tribulation is an opportunity to taste God. So I know it's so painful. I know, and some people have been through horrible things. Some of us here have been through lots of really difficult things, or going through something that is incredibly painful, that is a thorn in the flesh, a thorn in the side that you can see no way out of. You see no hope. You feel your dreams are dashed. But God is there, and God has promises even for those situations. And I promise joy even in those difficulties. But we have to give him a chance to pour his love into us, because that is the secret of true joy. It's not the problem being solved, although he does many times solve these problems. But the true secret is to allow him to speak in your ear. And we're so unfortunate that we're in such a noisy world with so many distractions, including our material goods, including our homes, including our phones, including everything. It's so noisy, he's very hard to hear. But he is sitting very patiently waiting to whisper words of love into each and every single one of our ears. Like, you might have a sin that you feel so guilty about, so burdened, you feel like there's no way, I'm the worst of the worst. Well, be encouraged. Many of the saints were like that. That's who these saints that we have in our church, like I mentioned last time, they were people who had a lot of sins, a lot of baggage, and God spoke lots of beautiful words of love to them. And these, we always say the Bible is a love letter to us. He says in Philippians 4:4, rejoice in the Lord always and be anxious for nothing. And thanksgiving is another weapon in your toolbox to bring joy in your life, to sit and just thank him for many things that he's given all of us, many blessings, but we forget because we're so preoccupied with that fly in the room that we can't see all the blessings that he's given us. And he talks always of hope. In Romans 12:12, he says, rejoice in hope and be patient in tribulations. This is the trick. And constant in prayer. Why prayer? Because prayer is where you give him a chance to speak to you, to speak his words of love. When I was asking my mom, preparing for this, I was like, so mommy, like, what brings joy to us? She goes, you know what brings me the most joy is liturgy. Because I go there and I forget everything and I just let him pour himself into me. And that it's supposed to be the pinnacle of our relationship with him, where you take him into you and you have him, you're like one with him. And you can pour all your worries out and cast your burdens on him. He says, cast your burdens on me. Cast all your cares on me. And the famous one, like, take my yoke on you because my burden is light. My yoke is easy. Saying, if we live according to his commandments, it's much easier, although it doesn't seem so, than living according to the commandments of the world. Like he says, the world is an enemy to him. And the world and the ways of the devil seeks to really destroy us. I don't know who here struggles with anxiety, but my husband, Father John, tells me that anxiety has become a real big issue now amongst people. It's like a great source of torture to so many people. Actually, I don't know if it's the same here in the UK, but like, if you struggle with worry and anxiety, you're not alone. A lot of people are. And this is something the devil is trying to really torture people and steal their joy away from them. But he says, come to me, and a lot of it is just in knowing his love. And it's not you manufacturing your feelings, manufacturing being happy, trying to pretend. No, it's you coming and seeing how precious you are in his eyes, letting him show you how special you are to him, how much he loves you, how much he notices everything about you. Like there's some beautiful verses. You know, there's a verse in the Psalms where it says, you every tear that falls from my face, you put it in a bottle and you keep it. Every tear. Or the very famous ones about not a hair from your head falls without him. My hair's always molting. Not a hair, and it has like mine already has. Not a hair falls without him noticing. Can you imagine that? Like we just have to give ourselves the space to be able to hear these lovely words from him, to know how, and that will bring so much. It will be a soothing to you, bring so much peace and calm, and put everything. It's like putting a pair of glasses on. You know, I don't know who I'm sure a lot of us wear I'm wearing lenses today, but I wear glasses. When I'm not wearing them, my kids think I'm blind if I'm not wearing my glasses. They're like, Mommy, can you see this? Mommy, can you see this? They find it really funny. My eyesight's not that bad. But without having his word in our life, without giving him a chance to pour his perspective on things, we're like somebody walking around without their glasses, and everything just looks wrong. Everything doesn't make sense. You know, and all the attacks of the devil, we give them a chance to bring us down and to steal our joy. Whereas somebody like Paul and Silas can be in the worst situation, and their joy, nobody can take it away from them. And another tool in our belt is the Jesus prayer. If you find your joy is disappearing from under your feet, you feel like you're in quicksand and your joy is just disappearing, you're in the middle of this big problem, just say the name of Jesus just by itself has so much power. Just repeat the Jesus prayer. Is you can say shortened version, long. I say the short version, but you can say long version. I'm going to say it wrong now, of course, because I say the short version. I just say Jesus. But the long version is, Lord Jesus, Son of God, have mercy on me, the sinner. Is that the long version? Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And just repeating it over and over. That just keeps any joy stealers away. Lord Jesus, Son of God, have mercy on me. Just say his name. It has so much power. And it's your way of saying to any attacks from the devil, anything that's trying to steal, I trust in God. I trust in God. Everything will be okay. I trust in God. And just refixing it. It's a beautiful way, because sometimes when you're in the middle of you're trying to find solutions for your problem and your mind's racing, you can't find, just saying his name just puts your glasses back on to see things the way that he sees them. I think, yeah. So I'm very excited for the next few weeks, because I think you're going to learn even more about how to continue, how to be transformed. There's some very good books about joy, about, you know, I'm sure there's one, Neil Anderson, Victory Over Darkness, right? Yeah. It's, if you're struggling with joy, I think that book also helps a lot to deal with things like that. But just number one, just sit, which is so simple, just to sit with him, give him a chance to talk to you, give him a chance to put all your fears, your worries, everything in the right place, and to tell you what his mind is on those things. I don't know if Abuna, you want to add anything, or if anyone has any questions or comments. You have a question? Oh.
Who's got the mic now?
Hi, Mary. No, I think that was a beautiful talk, and it really, really sort of resonated with me. I just wanted to add, like, my experience on some of the points you made. And I think, you know, your reference to the part in the liturgy where we say, you know, the lusts of the world, and that sort of thing, like, you know, what we don't realize is that sometimes it's not us that owns our possessions, it's our possessions that own us to some extent. When you finally get that career that you've always wanted, or that car that you've always wanted, you then sort of become subservient to that identity that you've created. So, like, you know, now, before you were unanxious, now you're anxious about someone threatening your job at work. Before you were, like, happy, now you are scared and worrying about what's going to happen to your car, Or, you know, you can't even enjoy the now because you're thinking about, oh, I'm going to be driving in my car. I want to be driving in my car. Do you know, I love my car so much. So who owns the freedom, the car or you? You've sold your freedom to be occupied with this material thing.
I'll tell you a funny story.
Sorry. And then the second point that I wanted to make as well is that because, you know, this, you know, you touched upon that, you know, nature is beautiful and you can see the beauty of God in nature. But what is that? It is a reflection of the source of beauty. It's not the beauty itself. It is a reflection of the source. So if you know the source of beauty, how can you appreciate the reflection? You know? So, you know, the source of it is is way more beautiful and way more occupatory than the actual reflection of it in what, you know, that he's created in the people around us and the nice environment and the nature. This is just the reflection. Why not appreciate the source?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Yeah, I agree. I was going to just say a funny story and then so this week I was on Facebook, just scrolling, whatever, and then somebody posted about a Taylor Swift concert that she added more dates next week or something. I have 3 girls, right? I didn't actually know much about Taylor Swift. I didn't even know what her songs were until 2 weeks ago. So we're not like diehard fans or anything. But I clicked on her link to try and buy tickets. And when I clicked on her link, I was like, oh my God, I might be able to get tickets. It looks like they're £100, whatever. And I continued clicking, and then it said, oh, you have to be in the queue to get, and then so I clicked to get in the queue, and then when I clicked to get in the queue, it said, no, you have to be invited to get in the queue. And I got so disappointed, and then I realized, wait, hold on a second. We don't even care about Taylor Swift. Like, my kids hardly know who she is. I don't like going to concerts. I was like, why am I even following these clicks and wanting to go to this? Because like you're saying, it's just one thing leads to another, leads to another, and then suddenly you find yourself chasing something and getting disappointed by something that I didn't even want in the first place. Or like going to Costco and you know, your parents go to Costco and they come back. This always happens to me. I go to Costco and I buy stuff because I'm like, wow, that's really nice and that's really cool, and I'll buy it. You know, my dad bought this cooler that goes on wheels. I don't know if anyone's gone to Costco recently, but they have this cooler that's on a trolley. So he bought it home and very excited about it. And we're like, wow, that's really cool, all of us. That's a really cool buy. It's for £20, blah, blah, blah. And then after a while, we were like, we've already got 2 coolers at home. Do we really need another? And that is the story of my life. I buy from Costco, I return the next week the same item because I realized I actually don't need it. But who was next?
I have 2 questions, if that's right. I think my first question is, where is the balance between being content and being complacent? Because I feel like you said in your talk, God has told us to be faithful and to work hard. But I also feel like that can also lead to a lot of frustration in your work because you're trying to work hard for His glory. And then my second question is, I think I like how you said we're supposed to soak with Christ and like get to know Him. But I think sometimes we know the knowledge in our head, but it's hard to live that reality. So like, you know that God is like in control, and I think that's why we have those buzz killers and they can like sway us away. So like, practically day to day, how can we ensure that we don't let these things steal our joy? Is it soaking more in Christ, or is it just
Okay, the first one, what's the difference between being content and complacent? Very good question. I mean, you probably know yourself. I think that the difference probably is complacent, you're just not bothered to go the extra mile, to put the extra work in. But doing things for the glory of God is you do work hard. Like, Christians in many countries are known that they are faithful and they work hard and they're honest. So I think you do that, but then the outcome, you leave it in God's hands. I think that's probably what I would say is the difference, is that, you know, and then you're doing it at peace. Because I know it's so hard, it's easy for me to say, because you do become attached to what you're putting your time and your all into. But you do it just reminding yourself, maybe if you have verses around the house, you know, saying everything I do it unto the Lord, that will just help to realign the way of thinking that I'm doing everything for His glory in the end. And your second question, oh gosh, I forgot it already. Your second question was, being in His love and, yeah. So day to day, how do you continue always to, I mean, the Jesus prayer is something you can do anytime, anywhere, and just trying to find ways of incorporating His word into your day, having people who who are holy, who feed into your day as well, like remind you of God, having just physical reminders of him everywhere, like pictures of him. Just training yourself, having prayer bracelets, prayer rings, like just, and it's a training. Try one habit at a time that you know, or just a necklace that you have across and you hold it and you say, when you're on the tube, you know, you just keep repeating that prayer. But choose one little habit at a time and build that in, and then another one. And just having physical verses or pictures of him everywhere just reminds you about him. Yeah. Yes.
Sorry, and
Yeah.
just want to say that was a great talk. Very much
God.
enjoyed it. Yeah, and it's funny because I'm actually reading Wounded by Love by Saint I can't say that.
Porphyrius, yeah.
Porphyrius, yeah.
Yes.
And I was about to catch this train that was 10 minutes late. I was really frustrated. And then I get on the train, I start reading this book about a saint that lived, 30, 40 years ago, not that long ago. And he had multiple ailments, like cancer, he couldn't see. And he's like, I'm so happy. I want to praise God all the time. Like, what am I complaining about here? But the question I had is, so to move more in that direction, what would you say is like a good first step, like almost like a baby step to kind of go in that direction? Is it tithing, fasting, anything else?
Very good question. Good first step. I mean, it depends. It depends on your individual life, what your individual life is like. But I would say to add one thing that brings you closer to him and try and cut one thing that is unnecessary in your life. Or in simple decisions that you make, like, do I really need the latest car? Do I really need to buy an extra dress? Do I really need to buy another coffee mug? Like, just to cut one little thing that you don't need and to add one thing that will let you bask in his love more. Like, to find another slot in your week where you can spend time with him in an undivided attention way. We hear stories of saints. I can't remember what I was saying. I think Anna Simone, she was a princess, and she used to dress really fancy, right? I think I'm telling the right story. She used to dress, and she was a princess, so she used to wear royal clothes, crowns. Underneath them, she would wear an ash cloth, like a sack bag, underneath her clothes. Nobody needed to know. It's okay. She dresses fancy because she has to. But underneath, and that was her way of reminding herself what really, so she doesn't become attached to all these worldly things. So I think between you and your spiritual father, you can say, like, I really want to take another step forward in my spiritual life. I want to taste his love more, and I want to get less attached to the world. So choose two things that tick those boxes, something that makes you less attached to the world. And sometimes it can be tricky. And pray. He will guide you what it is. Like, he will tell you, for you specifically, you, John, this thing is good for you to cut it out from your life, because this is making you attached to the world. But he will take you gently as well. He's not going to, it doesn't expect you to sleep on the floor, and have one set of clothes all the time. Have you guys heard of Mama Maggie?
Yeah.
So I just read her book really recently. So Mama Maggie, she wears all white. So I was listening to an interview. She's talking about why she wears all white. She said, I met this child who was really upset. She said, the kids are making fun of me because I only have one set of clothing. Everybody else is able to change the clothes every day. I just have one outfit, and I wear it all week. So she said, from that day, I decided to be the same. So, and she's from a very wealthy family, Mama Maggie. She serves the poor in poor garbage collectors in Egypt, for those who don't know. She's a very wealthy woman and very educated, but she gave up all of that lifestyle. So from then on, she said, I'm just going to wear one simple outfit. She wears this white, kind of like Mother Teresa a little bit. She's a married woman with kids. And that was what God called her to do. Everybody will be different. And sometimes, like St. Anna Simone, it's secret. A lot of the time it's secret. Nobody knows that you've done that. And we shouldn't do these things so that other people know. But it's setting yourself free a little bit. I don't know if that answers the question.
Can I add to that as well, Mary? Sorry. When I said earlier these possessions can end up owning you, what I meant is that your love for them basically allows these possessions and these identities and these things that you've occupied yourself with to live rent-free in your head. So, your thoughts could be occupied with serving the person that created you and everything around you, but instead you are serving this creation by allowing it to live rent-free in your head. So, you know, if you can replace the love for those objects and those identities and those things, those anxieties that you're allowing to live rent-free in your head with God, then they won't have that power over you anymore. If you replace your love of possession with the power of love, God's language is love, then, you know, you will find all of your anxieties, all of your troubles dissipate, regardless of what situation you're in. You will be able to see the situation that these, you know, these ladies who are in Auschwitz felt, in the bottom of destitute, like the worst of the worst conditions. And in this condition, their only dream is to come out and help the people that were putting them in that condition, right? So it's like, you know, it's so selfless that, like, their only occupation was, I love God so much, and I love his creation so much that I even want to save the portion of his creation that is doing this to me and causing me so much pain. Their own pain and suffering isn't even occupying any space in their minds. It is actually the pain and suffering that might be caused to the people who are causing them pain and suffering after they get out of here. So, it really boils down to that verse Mary was talking about earlier. Do not love the world or the things in the world, for the world and all of its lusts will pass away. It will. Your job title will pass away. You will pass away. Auschwitz will pass away. The prison warden will pass away. The murderer will pass away. The courts, the judicial system, the legal, all of it will pass away. The one thing that will remain once we are all gone, and even the memory of our existence is gone, is the relationship God has with us. And the sooner you learn that to be true, the sooner you realize everything else doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters is that I foster this relationship.
Thank you, Ralph. Any other questions? Do we have time? Yeah, one more question? Yes? 2 minutes.
You know what you were saying about the people in like other countries who are just happy all the time, but you also said they have no choice, right? So doesn't that kind of mean that, it's going to sound crazy, but they're a little bit more privileged spiritually because they have no choice but to be so happy and content because they don't actually have much? Here, where we are, we have so much choice that it's a detriment to us. It makes it really hard. How do we overcome that?
That's excellent. So we have this big sickness in the West that we think we're so privileged and we have so much and we think we're living the life. But I think it was Mother Teresa who said the sickness of the West is loneliness. And it's in Toronto, 100%. I don't know in London I don't think it's as bad here, but in Toronto, people are really lonely because the family unit's much less, present. So people are very, very, and that's a horrible feeling to be lonely. But we, as Christians, he promises us mothers, fathers, brothers, and sisters. That is part of the package, that he says when you leave, this to follow me. And I've seen it myself as somebody who's moved away from home. I've seen God gives me mothers, brothers. He gives you other, and he's done that to many people who've converted and had to really leave their family. God supplies more family members, and that's what we're called to do for each other. People in poor countries suffer in other ways. They are suffering. Like I said, they're happy, but they are suffering. It doesn't mean that it's easier for them when they're sick, and so they go through a lot, but they have no choice. And I think it makes them cling to God a lot more. So my aunt in Egypt, to see a doctor, it costs a lot of money, and so she has knee troubles and needed various surgeries, and it's expensive, and maybe they can't always afford it. So my mom tells me, she goes in Arabic, I'll say it in Arabic and I'll say it in English. She goes, "Ana tutu di aisha ala zayt al-holy." She said, this Tutu's her name, like Antoinette. She said she's living on holy oil. That's how she survives. She just, whenever she has pain, whenever something hurts her, she doesn't have the option of having knee surgery or have the option of having steroid injections or the option of medication. the only option she has is holy oil. And she said, and somehow it works. And in Egypt, for anybody who's been, you don't have elevators in many buildings. You have to walk up like 10 flights of stairs to get to your apartment. Like if you have knee trouble in Egypt, that can be a death sentence. It means you're stuck in your apartment all day long. There's nothing you can do. You can't do your groceries unless you use the basket down outside the window. But that's how people in poor countries will often live, because they have no choice. They will really just depend on God for miracles. And if a miracle doesn't happen, thank God, you know, my time to go is now. And it's still sad, it's still painful. But here in the West, we have this like very entitled, how dare I get sick? You know, I'm not supposed to, how dare the doctor not be able to cure me? Like that idea, that kind of way of thinking is crap. That was not present like 40 years ago. But this idea of how dare I get sick? How dare there not be a cure for whatever illness I have? Because we're so used to being able to pay to get everything fixed straight away. And that's made us not depend on God so much anymore, which means when we don't depend on God so much anymore, we don't see him, we don't experience him so much anymore, because we're using our muscles all the time, and we think we're, you know, like in Hollywood, everybody's trying to live forever and not change how they look, and everybody wants to be 20 forever. And, you know, I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with being healthy, and I think it's good to be healthy, but we want the fountain of youth here in the West, and we almost think we've got it, but we haven't. We haven't. There was a really nice story I read in the news, true story, about, I really want to know more about this man, but I couldn't find any more. A billionaire who died maybe 7 months ago in the States, and they said when they went to this billionaire, they found that he wore a very basic watch. He didn't have a Rolex. He had given most of his money away, had just kept a very small amount of money, lived in a small apartment, lived a very simple life, drove a basic car like, I don't know, Toyota or Honda or whatever, and he was living very simply into his old age. Wow, I admire him so much. Like, to have that much and give it away, wow. I really want to know, what did he discover that made him, and a lot of the time, people who reach the pinnacle of everything realize that that is nothing. Yeah, so, yeah.
But I also would like to add something to that question. I think everybody has a choice. So it is a choice. Even those people who are in, you know, underprivileged countries, they have a choice of being happy, or they have a choice to rebel against God. It's what I want to do and how I feel and where I want to position myself and how do I want to feel happy. People will feel happiness by always being the victim. People will feel happiness by always complaining. People will feel happiness in whatever way, but that's not the true happiness. So what I want to say is that it's important that we realize that people who are in underprivileged countries, they also have a choice. We here, we also have a choice. So the joy is something that we have to focus on and try to achieve in every situation. Bish.
I just wanted to add that essentially happiness and joy should be something that comes from within you, because if you lay your happiness and joy and you make it dependent on the material things around you, then eventually it will end, just as they will end. So if you want it to be eternal, as they say, you should focus it on things that are intangible, i.e. the things up there. I think because we also had a teacher back in school who was actually a multi-millionaire. So they were a teacher because they loved teaching, but they had like a multinational conglomerate on the side. It was really weird, but anyway. So this teacher...
You're selling to the students most probably.
Yeah. So this teacher, they were actually a Christian as well. They were Catholic, and I remember them saying to us one day, because obviously the students knew about their side hustle, if you like, and they asked the teacher, what's it like? Why do you still teach? What's the point? You could have retired in like a penthouse in San Diego or something. And the teacher basically just very simply said that if I were to replace all the happiness that I got from teaching and replaced it with everything that I've gained from this business, then essentially I'm going to lose myself, because I found myself through teaching. She loves teaching. She loves her personality with the students. She loves preparing lessons on PowerPoints. It's what she takes pleasure in. And she said that the business thing was just a means of stability and kind of, making sure you take the extra step to challenge yourself in life. Because in life, you could say, fine, I'll just do the basic menial job. But if you don't actually take those steps to challenge yourself, then you won't actually find true happiness. And it comes back to this idea of God wanting to access your potential. And in order to do that, it has to break you down a little bit. It's kind of like when you're in the gym, you tear your muscles a bit by doing the exercises, but then you eat the protein afterwards, and that gets them back up. It's the same thing with us. He breaks us down and builds us back up. Yeah, sorry, that was a really, really specific example.
Okay. Any other questions for Mary? We will be hanging around. Mary's not going to go anywhere, so we will please afterwards have some time with Mary. But Mary, please show our appreciation to Mary. That was amazing. Thank you. So I do remember Mary's wedding, and it was actually it did rain while we were in church. Yes. But when we came out, it stopped raining. So God actually answered your prayers, Mary, because we did actually have the seating outside in the garden or in the field. So that was brilliant. So next week, next week. She doesn't want me to announce this, but I will. But I will. So we spoke about the secret of joy, and I'm gonna just elaborate on this a little bit more. But next week we have, why do you forget the truth that God loves you? Just to complement the secret of joy. And we have a very special speaker, our very own Fiamita. So please come with very difficult questions around, forgetting the truth that God loves you. But when Mary was talking, so a couple of things that I picked up. So the first thing is this example of being attached to worldly things so much. And I can't remember, was it Raf who spoke about being attached to a car that much? I don't know if I told you this story before about I love my cars. Yes, yeah, I am a priest and I do love my cars. Yes, and it is. I've overcome it to a great extent, but yes, I do love my cars, and I'm very picky about my cars and what car I get and what the options are in my car. This is what I used to be. Okay, now I have my car and not changing it. Okay, but one day I was like, if my car gets scratched. For Arabic speakers, Ya Nahar Iswad. Oh, it's like, this is a black day. This is a doom day if my car gets scratched. So we had Bible study going on in Heaven every Fridays, and it went around homes. We had this for 10 years, 12 years in our area. So one day we were going through the Bible, and I can't remember what we were reading, but it was around not being attached to the worldly things. And I just said, you know what, I really need to change my attitude, and I am going to pray. While we were in the Bible study, I said, I'm going to pray, God, please, I do not want to be attached to, this phobia that if my car gets scratched, I'm going to get upset, and, the whole household is going to pay the consequences of it. So please, let me overcome it. And for the first time, I learned what it means that the gates of heaven were open for prayers at that very moment. So that was Friday evening. Sunday morning, I'm rushing to St. Mark because, as always, I'm late. And I'm rushing, and I'm just coming, and I'm about to park, and I'm reversing, and then, not a scratch, boom. And I look, and I find a very gentle soul. He was he's a deacon, he's very gentle, he's very and he was holding onto his small car, and he was behind his steering wheel, and he was looking at me, because he jumped into my car, and he was looking at me knowing that most probably I'm gonna go and offer him as the sacrifice. So I looked, and I just, okay. Thank you, Habibi. You can go. And then I parked, and then I went in, and I said, if I knew that the gates were heaven or open, I would have asked for something else. But anyway, here goes. So actually, I was taught that day, actually, my car was badly damaged. But anyway, I was taught that day that actually I should not be attached to it. So nowadays, like my car gets, jammed, my alloy wheels, like they get whatever, I don't care. It's fine. It's just a car. I'm over that. But there's other things which I'm not over. So I don't need to go into that for you now. The other thing that while Mary was speaking, joy is, as we said, is something that you find in yourself. But to find it, there's something which is very important. You have to let go. You have to let go of a lot of things. The story that I always is very close to my heart is the story of Jacob. We all know Jacob, Jacob was running after a blessing that was only in his mind. That blessing is what is going to bring him joy. So what was the blessing? He thought that the blessing was being in the head of the family, the blessing from his father, the blessing in inheritance, the blessing in having possessions, cattle, whatever that is. And all his life, he was running after these things. It is only when he came to the river of Jabbok. Does anybody know what Jabbok means? Jabbok means let go. Okay? It's only when he came to the river of Jabbok and he crossed all his family and he crossed all his possessions and he was left alone. At that point in time, God appeared to him because he let go. He came to the place where it meant let go, and he physically let go. And at that point in time, God revealed himself. And this is why when we read the story, we find that Jacob was wrestling. Everybody it's puzzling. Why are you wrestling with God? Why is he wrestling with God? Because he wasted all his life running after things which he thought will bring him joy, and the real joy was in God. And once he found God, the real joy, he was holding on to him with every fiber of his being. That is the wrestling. God, I wasted all these years running after something fake, which I thought will bring me joy, but now I found real joy, so I'm going to hold on to it with every fiber of my being. And that's the wrestling. That is the wrestling. So I really pray that we all find the Jabbok and we let go. Because once we do that, joy is something we will find. It is not something that we have to search for. It's inside of us. He's around us. He's with us. All we have to do is Jabbok. Okay? Enough of these stories. I have a couple of announcements to make, as I did promise. So, the first one is in 2 weeks' time, we have, other than welcoming Desio, and is anybody else coming? Okay. In 2 weeks' time, we're gonna have bring your own lunch, or bring your own dish. Where's Mariam? Yeah, is it Patla? Yeah. So if who's responsible? Marina Abdullah. So if you want to bring a dish where you want to wow the rest of us, please go and register with Marina. Marina, I will also do something myself personally. Yeah. And may God forgive me for lying. I will try, okay? And I'll get you all, paracetamols, and I'll make sure you're gonna live after this happens, okay? So please, it's really good when we all bring something together and, put some effort in it. The second thing is, the second thing is not such a joyful news. We are actually, one of us is unfortunately leaving next week. She's been with us for a while. She's such a gentle soul. I don't know, I'm sure we've interacted with her and, we've admired her being here. Lydia is going back to Egypt, unfortunately. So we're really going to miss you, Lydia. We're going to be praying for you. So please stand up. Let's give her, a warm send up. Why don't you come up here? Embarrass you even more. For those of you who do not know Lydia, it's your chance to know her today. So Lydia is going back to Egypt. Unfortunately, she's leaving us. But every time you have the chance to come here, we would love to have you.
I just wanted to say that this makes me more embarrassed now. I want to thank everyone because when I came here, it was really nice that everyone was so welcoming. They just were just opening their arms for everyone. I'm so nervous now because you're all looking at me. Yes, so Abuna, please. But yeah, really, I remember everyone. I remember my first time when Abuna Thomas told me, when I just went to the church and he told me, oh, you're Lydia. So I thought, oh, you know really each one here. So when a new face comes, you just know who is it. So it was really nice to meet you all. And I'll be back in Jan, hopefully. So I'll just come and say hi every now and then. Thank you so much, Abuna. Thank you for everyone who was really welcoming. I know that I didn't get the chance to know everyone, but thank you all and see you next year.
I hope nobody else is leaving us. Do I need to announce anybody else is leaving us? Hopefully not. Okay. Okay, so tomorrow, reminder, we have Bible study. We have Acts 5, 6, Act 6. Guys, we are really going the speed of lightning. So we've been, 15 weeks over in Acts so far. So anyway, so please, Ehab is going to be leading tomorrow, so 7:30. And then starting Wednesday, every evening, we're going to have the Vespers and Venerations of Virgin Mary. So please come, and it's a good chance that we can all come together. The final announcement that I told you I have for you. Okay. So we have been praying very hard about something that it's about time you guys start getting involved in something directly. Okay, you come, you're fed, I don't mean physically, I mean fed spiritually, but it is time that we go out and we do something. So we have been praying about something that we did 12 years ago, and it didn't happen again. And Mary touched on it in the talk today. We are going to go on a missionary trip. And the missionary trip is going to be in Africa, and it is going to be right after Easter, and it is going to be an amazing, life-changing experience. استنى بس أخلص. لا ما فيش أسئلة خالص دلوقتي. مفيش أسئلة. Okay? So we're preparing for it. The reason why I'm not going to give too much of it now, because we're trying to book a number of things. We're trying to find how many people, the maximum number of people we can go with the lowest cost possible, and where we're going to go. And we want this to be an amazing, life-changing experience. For those who went to Kenya 12 years ago, I think it was. There was another 7 years ago. It was really, really life-changing experience. People came back, and when we talk about, the little children having those smiles on their face, I remember there was one kid who was jumping up and down because I gave him a pen. The pen was like the most important thing that he had. And he was going around with the pen, and he was like writing, and then, he wants to save the ink. Okay, and we throw them, like the pens are everywhere. So you can imagine, but these, young kids, and hopefully when we go out and see them, they have the most beautiful smiles on their face. They're samara kida love, and then you just see this beautiful smile all the time. So please pray. We want your prayers because we are just preparing for it, and I'll be giving out more details when I can. But the reason why I'm saying this now is because I want you to start saving up on 2 fronts, financially and holidays, because we're planning that it's going to be a minimum of 10 days. So we would like you to save financially, try to save up some money, and also try to save up on your holidays. And it's going to be right after Easter, God willing. Okay? Any questions that I'm able to answer, I will answer. Any questions that I'm not able to answer, Yabshoy, I will not be able to answer. Two, كمان ماشي.
Do you happen? So you said you don't know exactly where. Do you have any idea potentially where? because it leads on to the next question. Do you have like a budget in mind of how much we should save?
Classified information.
Nash.
On both fronts. I said Africa. Sorry, I said Africa, and we're trying to bring the budget as low as possible. So it is not going to be above £2,000. It's so you're okay with £2,000? خلاص ماشي. Okay, budget £2,000 done. No, it's definitely going to be under £1,000, all in all. So yes. So we're going. That's what I'm trying to do. So that's why we need to negotiate with the airlines. We need to negotiate with the destination to make sure that we're there. We have proper accommodation for everyone. Okay. Have I answered your questions, Bishoy? Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Okay. Thou shalt stone him after the meeting. Any other questions? Yes. What happened to the Coptic lessons that was supposed to start? We don't have the person who's leading the Coptic lessons, so when she's back from holiday, we will go back to that. Good question. Good question. Yes, that's you. No, it's going to be initially online, and then there's going to be every now and then there's going to be a gathering for it. So, but that was the plan. But people have been on holiday, so apologies about that. Any other question? Any other announcement? Anything else? Okay, shall we stand up for prayer?